Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. October 4th is Wednesday. We've made it to the halfway point. Appreciate you being with us, as always. A little bit of news to talk about today.
Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality.
Let's do it again.
And Andy Moore Honda.
Yeah, let's hear it one more time.
Know your role and shut your
intro
mouth,
continues
you
to roll.
jabroni!
That's right, you jabroni. All right, welcome back. What a day, of course. Big news breaking. Kyle Neddenriep will be along. Rick Bozich, look forward to talking to him about this. And Todd Leary. He knows much about what I'm about to talk about. The Indiana-Kentucky basketball series is returning. Albeit with Kentucky certainly getting the better end of it, but it took that to get this series back in play. And I'm fine with it. I don't care. I mean, I do care. I think that it's, as long as that next contract is equal, it was set up this way, I think, specifically for a reason. I do not think you will see John Calipari in Simon Scott Assembly Hall. I've said that a thousand times. I didn't think this series would come back until he was gone. 3 more years is probably about it, maybe, for him. So I do not believe you'll see him in Assembly Hall, which is fine. Kentucky gets 1 game in Assembly Hall, as a matter of fact. The series will be split 2 games at Rupp Arena, 1 game at Lucas Oil Stadium as a neutral site, which that's exactly what it will be, neutral, because it's going to be an even split, as it usually always is. I remember games in Freedom Hall. There was a distinct line down the middle of red and blue. And then Indiana gets a game in Assembly Hall. Of course, that's going to dominate the news today. In addition to the Indiana basketball staff, they are out recruiting and recruiting hard, 4 deep on Boogie Fland, without question, making a return trip there after both John Calipari and Nate Oates made visits. They are out making that visit today but they're not done. They are also expected to see Liam McNeely again, Derek Queen again, along with Curtis Givens, who I believe, didn't Curtis Givens already commit to someone? I thought, but I'll have to go back and look at that. But either way, they're out making their last pitches and making it stick. But what do you think about the series returning? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about how it's set up? Do you care as long as the series is back? Caleb doesn't think that Lucas Oil will be a 50-50. Man, I don't know. Kentucky travels well, and that's not far at all for them to travel. I mean, if you take the base around the Louisville area, that's an easy 2-hour drive straight up the interstate. And it also, what that does, that gives opportunities. You know, they list it as this is an opportunity for more IU fans to see. Well, yeah, but it's an opportunity for more Kentucky fans just as much. So I think I think it will be close to 50-50 personally. Either way, I don't know how much it will really matter in a stadium of that size. The noise is not as prevalent. Not that it doesn't get loud, but Tony says that he saw Rick Bozich say that IU will get the majority of the tickets. Well, we'll talk to Rick's on the program today. Did I fail to mention that? No. Yeah, Rick Bozich joining us later on. We'll talk about that. I'm sure that's going. Well, I know that'll be the highest topic of conversation, as it will be with Todd Leary comes on as well. Looking forward to all of that. Sean saying hard to ask for any more effort from the staff and chasing some of the recruits they're trying to land. Absolutely, they've went hard. I mean, Mike Woodson going. He's out on the he's logging the miles, man. Got that knee fixed and he's kicking it. Got to land him. And you heard Rob Cassidy from Rivals on here on this show just 2 days ago say that he feels really good about where Indiana is with Boogie Flan. I think he's just such an unknown. Liam McNeely is just thought to really not to be as close to a lock as you can be, as there's, I don't know that there is any such thing as a lock anymore, but Boogie Fland is probably floating in the, he's outside of that lock, but landing Liam McNeely, that might help. Not sure that that matters to Caleb, but or Boogie Fland. And they're still after Derek Queen. They want to make, and that would make a huge statement also. If Indiana were able to land, obviously, Liam McNeely, Derek Queen, Boogie Fland, that's a Kansas, a Duke class. That puts Indiana back in that conversation of where they used to be almost immediately. Mike Woodson getting Jalen Hood-Schifino to the NBA, getting Trace Jackson Davis to the NBA is a big part of, I think, of what these guys are looking at. And I'll be honest with you. If Mike Woodson hadn't come along, I don't know that Trace makes it to the NBA. Not because of his talent is not there, but how he was used, the lack of an offensive scheme prior to Woodson rolling around, but that's because they were never in the game. Tony said you never heard of any type of push for recruits from Archie. I think he was never in the game for anybody, not serious. But the Indiana staff is trying to make that happen, and it would be a major statement. It would send a shot over the bow of Duke, of Kansas, of anybody. Not that it's going to scare anybody. You're not scaring Bill Self in Kansas. They're going to still get theirs. There's too many good basketball players out there. But when you set your sights on someone and you really go in and you put the resources in that Indiana has put in, I don't think Kansas hasn't put the resources into, say, Liam McNeely that Indiana has. No one has. So that's part of the reason why getting him is very important. That may be the case for Boogie Fland as well. I'm not quite sure on that one, but they're going deep right now, and it'll be funny to see if anybody follows Indiana back with trips, with visits. Caleb says that Philly Donovan tweeted IU as a slight favorite for Boogie over Kentucky. And, yeah, Trilly Donovan, rather, a well-known Twitter account, national account. And I'm beginning to think that is the case. I knew that they were really, really, really close. But with Rob Cassidy kind of backing that up, he's like, I really think they're in a good place. He's trying to say something without saying something. And now Indiana going up there all in. They didn't go up there to come back empty-handed. Now, you also heard Rob Cassidy say that a decision is not expected until the end of the month for Boogie Flan, while Liam McNeely, his decision should come within the next 2 weeks, which we'll wait and see if that turns out to be the case. We've got lots more Indiana Sports Beat coming up. We'll be back with it and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Man, I told Todd to do 9:10. I should have had him do 8:50. I wasn't thinking. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quicker break for the next. Remind me to take a shorter break.
You want to do like a 10-minute segment?
Yeah, maybe 10,
okay.
12.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea so it gives you more time on the other end for Fort Wayne.
That is the point.
And sorry about that with the intro. Every time I log into here, it has loop clicked. And the last 2 days, I remembered to unclick it. And today, I didn't. You have to unclick that. It's automatically set to loop every time for some reason. This is my Maurice Creek shirt that we had signed at, I think it was at Cabello.
Cabello.
The American in me wants to pronounce that CH.
Cool.
I love that. I've seen the comments. I love that Mello is helping out with recruiting for IU. It's pretty nice.
Let's see. Did I miss any? Man, I haven't said. I'll get to. That's what I'll do. I'll get to everybody here in this segment, saying hello to everybody.
Awesome.
That's what I should start doing anyway. Doing that in the second segment once everybody is on, because I end up missing some people.
I like that you do that. I'm sure the fans love it too. Makes for good conversation. All right, we're going to go live in about 5 seconds. I'll remind you to stop early. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. We've made it to the halfway point of the week and a lot to talk about today. Mainly the Indiana-Kentucky series is back. Now, that begins in the 25-26 season. And it is a 4-year contract. So I'm assuming the last game of that series is the game that's going to be at Assembly Hall. I do not expect John Calipari to be around any longer. So that will give him the out that he so desperately seeks. He does not want to go back to the place where he got his butt whipped with a number 1 ranked team, which is kind of funny. It would be ironic to see Indiana go down to Rupp Arena in that first game and win. There is nothing that should be more gratifying to any Indiana fan if that were to happen. They can lose the second one or whatever. But just looking forward to it. And I'm going to be interested to see what the Kentucky take on this is. As a matter of fact, I should have tried to get Matt Jones on here. I may have to try to do that this week. That would be awesome. But yeah, interesting to see how this is going to play out, what the fans think. I've been waiting over in the comments. Shout out to Kent checking in from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Thanks, Fred. Easton, Pennsylvania. Tony B up in Whitehall, Michigan. Larry out in Las Vegas. Doug all the way from Lagodi. Jamie jumping off in Grand Rapids. Man, our Michigan crew is awesome. Fozan, he's from just a little place in Amman, Jordan. Yes, that is the country. Tony, Tanis, Caleb, Robert, Sean, Forrest is on. 5 lefts. Derek, Kent. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody already jumping on here. And then I'll jump back to some of the comments and questions. Jason. Oh, well, is that right? Jason says you don't want Matt Jones. Go read his ex tweets about this game coming back. What were they, Jason? I have not paid attention to those. I'm sure that he thought that Indiana was beneath Kentucky, and that's fine. Let them think whatever they wish. I think it makes for great content. But like I said, there's nothing better. There would be nothing better than Indiana to go down and win that first game in Rupp Arena. Because when the series was canceled, do you know what team was scheduled to play the next season? That's right. The number 1 ranked Indiana Hoosiers, to my knowledge. But that didn't happen. Indiana has won 2 out of the last 3 contests with Kentucky. They won the last time they played, which was in the NCAA tournament in 2016. So a lot of positives for Indiana on that side of the ledger. But, I'd be curious to see what that would say. So I pretty much summed it up. Okay. Well, that's Kentucky. And there's a lot of, but I've got to tell you, there are a lot of Indiana fans who are the same way. That goes both ways. Not that line of thinking, but it does. There are plenty of Indiana fans who have thoughts that are what I would call a little over the line, in exuberance, and that's part of the fandom, and that's what makes it great because the series is coming back. And having those thoughts and those beliefs, well, that puts the pressure on Kentucky. Well, they're supposed to win now. Why? I have no idea. It's not like Indiana was not Indiana for a long time. I'll grant you that. And it's a good thing that they probably weren't playing during this period, especially the Archie Miller period. It would have been awful and ugly. Hell, Indiana was losing to Indiana State and IUP Fort Wayne. So, no, it's a good thing that they were not playing Kentucky during that time. But that has changed. The talent level's changed. They're on equal footing. And I think they know that that's a game that they don't want to lose. It's not the same as losing to North Carolina to them because it's not as close. Just think about that. I mean, think about your rivals, whether you want to see them as a rivalry or not, and they're trying to play this rivalry down for the reasons I just talked about. But it's here, baby, and I'm looking forward to it. Robert says lots of Kentucky fans down in southern Indiana. Absolutely, there are, especially right across the river, and I get it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of younger generation of Indiana kids, that when they're growing up, Indiana sucked. So when you're young, you're looking for a winning team, especially if you don't have a parent that is kind of pushing something on you. It heads that way. I'm going to take a break, and we're going to see if we can get Todd Leary on, and look forward to talking a little bit more about this. Former Indiana basketball player Todd Leary, of course, as you know very well. And we'll be back with that and more here from us high atop the 18th fairway at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Don't forget, brought to you by the Wild Food Group and Andy Moore Honda. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I just sent him a text. I should have sent it a minute ago. He's got to stop. He's driving.
I'm glad you brought up that about Kentucky fans downplaying the rivalry, because I was seeing that on Twitter last night too, that they're like, Kentucky's doing this for IU and stuff like that, that they really downplay the rivalry on their end.
Yes. They act as if Indiana needs Kentucky. What is it that we need Kentucky for? God dang it. What is it that Indiana needs Kentucky for? I'd love for him to say that. They're in the best conference. And if they beat them for Boogie Flan, I'm like, what is it again that they need you for? I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that? I do. I also I removed my fan chip.
I like that you do.
But there's
that.
one. But there's one team.
Mater. It is your alma mater.
There's one team. It's it's a chore to not. That's why I used the word a minute ago that I'm like, I said we, and I'm like, oh, don't do that.
IU is your alma mater, though, right?
But I also grew up in Southern Indiana, which kind of fueled my disdain for Kentucky. Being close to UK fans, it was
being from Evansville. I know all too well.
Oh, see, I keep forgetting you're from freaking Evansville,
River City, River Rats.
Now see, they call it the River City because Louisville calls it.
I've heard it be called Stoplight City a lot.
Really, got that many stoplights?
Yeah, I guess truckers would call it Stoplight City, and there's a park on the Lloyd. You'll see a sign if you're on the. I don't know if you know familiar with the Lloyd Expressway, but if you're heading west,
Oh yes,
you'll see a sign by a park by like Fulton area that says Stoplight City. But all right, it's time for us to go live. Do you know if
yeah, he's going to be joining us. He'll just join us when he had to pull over.
And you want this segment to go to just make up for the lost time with this one?
Oh yeah, we're going to go all the way to the end with this.
Okay, then we'll go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, and it is almost a holiday, Christmas. Christmas come early as news about the Kentucky-Indiana basketball series returning. I don't know. It's like Christmas for me. I'm jacked about it. Just from the standpoint, it was the best basketball series in the country. Screw North Carolina, Duke, blah, 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 blah. Johnny come latelys. Indiana and Kentucky, both blue bloods from long ago. Indiana winning the first national title back in the 40s. Kentucky winning their first national championship in the 50s. It continued. Indiana has had a bad lull due to bad hires. Just horrific basketball coaching hires, but now they've come out of that, and they're still coming out of that as Mike Woodson continues to do that with great recruiting efforts. Today, they are the entire staff of Yasir Rosemond and Kenya Hunter, along with Brian Walsh and Coach Woodson out on the road. And I'm talking about some traveling here, babe. They're at New York, Florida, Boogie Fland, Liam McNeely, Derek Queen, and 4-star Curtis Gibbons. But I thought that Curtis Gibbons had made a commitment to someone. Did I? I guess maybe that's not the case, or they would not be speaking with him. But McNeely, of course, down to supposedly Indiana and Kansas, which Rob Cassidy feels extraordinarily strong. Rivals national recruiting director. I feel very strong about Liam McNeely. His decision is expected to come probably in less than 2 weeks, thereabouts, or about 2 weeks. Boogie Fland, a highly sought after guard that Indiana and Kentucky and now Alabama have kind of gotten into the fray, but Indiana making another effort with a visit to him today with the entire staff. And someone mentioned earlier that Trilly Donovan, a kind of a well-known national basketball recruiting, and how these guys do that, I don't know. But speaking of great knowledge, here comes we have to give the safe suit, what Johnny Carson used to have. Todd Leary joining us. What was that Johnny Carson bit that he had? Oh man, where he would know the answer, he would give the answer, then open up the envelope. The great Karnak.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves by knowing that.
The great Toddak.
There you go.
But no, it's not. Then we have the Todd. What was it? What's the actual name that you were given? The Todd father.
Todd Father.
The Todd Father.
The original show, yeah.
The original Todd Father has returned. But man, all I've been talking about is the return of the Kentucky Indiana series.
Yep.
It's got me jacked. I am neutral on pretty much all accounts, but it's hard for me to not. I grew up hating Kentucky, so it's hard for me not to still not do that. And so I'm not going to stop doing it. I don't like Kentucky. I've never have, and I never will. and I'm not going to hide that one. So that's the only one I'll let out. I hate them. I'm glad this is back. And there's nothing more than I would love to see than for Indiana to go win that first game in Rupp Arena, because the only way they were able to get this series, Todd, is for Indiana to give them 2 games in Rupp, a neutral game at Lucas Oil, and then the last game at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And I don't think Calipari will be around for that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. They could win 4 national championships by the time that comes around. They could have all losing seasons. It's hard to tell, but I'm with you. Like I want the series no matter what it costs, no matter what where we have to play them. If they were all at Rupp Arena, I mean, as long as we shared the revenue, I honestly, I don't care. And you know, I've said this for years now, and I used to say it on the show with you all the time, is as many times as you can play in an NCAA host environment, which both Rupp Arena and Lucas Oil Stadium are NCAA host sites, the more you can play in those during the season, the better off, the more advantage you're going to have, you know, making the tournament and getting to play in the tournament. And so as many games as you can play of those that you can, I think is great. And so I don't mind. I wouldn't care if they were all at Rupp Arena, because that's an NCAA host site. Now, obviously,
and a tough one at that.
As a fan, I don't want to feel like we gave into Kentucky. But I mean, that's just me being egomaniac. Like I, as long as we get to play them, I'm with you. I grew up. I know I was supposed to hate Purdue, but I mean, I hated Kentucky, and that's just the way it all. People of our age and generation. I mean, I'm in your country right now. I'm down in New Albany. I mean, everybody down here wants to play this series. Like, there's no reason not to play this series, and you know, it's whatever it had to happen. I think it's a great. I just read something a little while ago that said the game at Lucas Oil is still a home game for Indiana, so they're going to get the majority of the revenue from 43,000 tickets instead of 17,000. I mean, that's a gigantic win.
And it gives a lot more people on both sides of the aisle an opportunity to see the game, because there's basically
2.5 times tickets. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that'll be that's a great NCAA environment that you talk about. That's exactly what you end up playing in Indiana. And Mike Woodson has done a good job of getting Indiana back in those lines. This year they'll be playing in Madison Square Garden twice. They're playing Auburn down in Atlanta. Yep. Then you've got a home game with Kansas, which is just going to be one of those jacked up affairs.
Yep.
Which will kind of prepare you for the Big Ten a little bit, because that's how it's going to be. And but man, just getting this series back I think it's great for college basketball, because to me, there was no question this was the best series in college basketball. Forget Duke, North Carolina. They're Johnny-come-latelys in my mind, because Indiana has done this and Kentucky forever, for decades and decades. And they have been playing this series for decades. You had people like Rupp and Knight going against each other. Then Knight and Joe B. both had won national titles.
Yeah, Joe B.
So
when Joe B. Hall was there, I mean, I think that's when that was our youth growing up. Like, that's when we wanted to kill him. And that's when, Coach Knight, like I'll tell you, he never outright said it in practice, but I will tell you this. We knew that the Kentucky week, like that was the game we had to win. Like Purdue, yes. Coach Knight always said every game counts as just as much as the next or whatever. And yeah, you have to say that. But I can tell you, based on preparation and what we did and how we handled things and what we did during those preparation weeks for those games, Purdue and Kentucky were different. And I would say Kentucky was top of the road there. And he wanted to beat Kentucky, I think, worse than anything. Every year he went down and did the speech down at Huber Winery and all that down there. And I mean, that's right on the border of Indiana and Kentucky. And it's a big deal. It always was a big deal for Coach Knight to win that game. And so it became a big deal, obviously, for me as a player. As a fan growing up, I mean, I was as big an IU fan as anybody as a kid, and I hated, I wanted Indiana to win that game more than anything. And it's just it's awesome that it's back. You know, the whole comparing it to Duke, North Carolina, and all that. It's tough. You know, in the Midwest, that is the biggest rivalry. Indiana, Kentucky is the biggest rivalry. In the Southeast, Duke, North Carolina is the biggest rivalry. I mean, out west, they're going to say it's UCLA and USC probably. I mean, who knows? But for us around here, this is a big deal, and you know, all the parties responsible for it deserve it a tremendous amount of credit, because it's a big deal to get this thing back on the books.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's good for IU fans, but I said earlier, it was a good thing that this probably was not happening during the Archie Miller era. Indiana, with no doubt, had just, and it wasn't before him, but they had just taken that dip for several years, and that would have been not fun. And that's the funny thing is, Kentucky fans, and not just fans, but people who do what we do here, are trying to portray this as charity, like they're doing something for Indiana. Indiana doesn't need this game; they want this game. They want to play the game because it should be played. Number one, why should it not be? But they want to act like that Indiana has, just because they went through that period, are that. And it's like, whoa. Actually, they beat Kentucky 2 out of that last 3 times they played. The last time they played, they beat them. They beat Calipari when he had a number 1 ranked team. That's the stuff to me that sticks in. He doesn't want that again. He doesn't want the opportunity to lose to a team that he's convinced his fan base is beneath him. I think. I truly believe that.
Well, I mean, I've heard that argument for years, and it's very difficult to go against it because for whatever reason, he hasn't really supported wanting to continue that series. So, I mean, it's hard to argue against that. But, I mean, during that time, I mean, they scheduled Gonzaga to come. Now, Gonzaga went to Kentucky, and they played at Rupp Arena. But, I mean, it isn't like he scheduled all cupcakes. I don't think he scheduled games just for them to win. But I think I do 100% believe that he knows how important it is to Indiana fans. It's less important to Kentucky fans because Indiana hasn't been for over a 20-year period. Indiana hasn't been at the top 20 level consistently. And I mean, I get why he can act like it's not that big a deal and not that big a game. And he can, as an arrogant person, I don't know him at all, so I don't really mean that, but his actions sure seem arrogant in not wanting to continue that series. And it's bigger than John Calipari. You know, the Indiana-Kentucky rivalry is much bigger than whatever coach is there at the time, even when it was Knight and Joby Hall. Like, 2 bordering states like that are such big, I'll call them both blue blood basketball schools, should always play each other. And I'll throw Louisville in there also. I think Louisville should, as close a proximity as it is to Indiana should always play Louisville as well from a fan's perspective. And yep. I think down the road, I loved it when it was Freedom Hall and the Hoosier Dome. Like that
I mentioned earlier, and it was during your playing days in Freedom Hall, you can see a line right down the middle at center court going to the ceiling. One side was red, one side was blue. I mean, it was the Civil War, baby. I mean, it was the Civil War. And as far as Louisville, they're trying to put that together. Kenny Payne told Mike he's not quite ready yet to play you guys. And after last season, you saw why he's not. But they might be playing this year in New York. If Indiana loses to UConn, they'll have to play either the winner-loser of the Texas-Louisville game. So there's a good chance that happens this year. So there's a possibility that Indiana plays Louisville and then Kentucky in successive years. But and this is also big for recruiting right now because one of the top targets that Mike Woodson and his staff are out to see up in New York today is Boogie Fland. He is a 5-star point guard that it's basically down to Indiana and Kentucky. Alabama's in there, but I think that it's Indiana and Kentucky. And this would be huge for Mike Woodson to land this guy over John Calipari, especially immediately after the announcement of this series. That would be just add fuel to this little bit of fire that's going right now, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, there's so many great recruits that, Indiana's in the running for that they weren't in the running for in prior coaching staffs. So, that's exciting. That's fun. It'd be a big deal. I don't like to put too much emphasis on one recruit here and there or whatever, because honestly, some of Indiana's best players of all time came way under the radar and were not highly rated and not 5 stars in today's terminology. And so there is a lot to it. Some of these guys that are out there right now, boy, it would sure be nice to have. Boogie Fland's one of those guys. But I also don't hang too much on if they don't get that. All of a sudden I don't jump off the bandwagon and say Boogie's not a great player. I mean, he's tremendous either way. I'd love to see him in an Indiana uniform. But I mean, this series, you are correct in saying it touches more things than just, the rivalry and the fan base and all that. It's a big recruiting tool. Obviously those would be nationally televised CBS games, or whatever the network is at that point. So yeah, those are all big time recruiting things, especially for guys that might be 1 or 2 year players and onto the NBA. As many nationally televised games as you can, advertise to them in the recruiting process, the better. And those recruits definitely look at that kind of thing. How many times are they going to be seen by the whole country?
How much had Indiana lost nationally, you think, from a perception standpoint during the end of the Tom Crean, Archie Miller era?
A lot.
I mentioned earlier, when I said before you joined us that it was a good thing this series wasn't around. And hell, Indiana was losing to Indiana State, now you Fort Wayne. So right. It was good that wasn't there then. And it actually started during the Mike Davis era. As soon as Bob Knight was gone. I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think Indiana may have led the series at that time, but now they're like 7 games under 500 with it. But I'm jacked. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and it kind of came out of nowhere there. And I'm like, all right, buddy, let's go.
I'm with you, because it was.
I almost warm. It's actually to go into a Colts game, but I have it looks like Kentucky blue pullover. I was about to put that thing on. I'm like, rock on, baby, let's go. I've got a son that goes to the University of Kentucky. So yes, Whoa! I did not know that.
Yeah, you did. Will goes to Kentucky.
How'd that happen?
I'll tell you this. To his defense, he grew up and he was the biggest Kentucky hater in our whole family. He still to this day has a T-shirt that says "Worst State Ever" with the state of Kentucky on the front of it, and that was his favorite. That's one of those as a kid we had to pry off of him. He'd wear it 8 days in a row, and so that doesn't change anything. But actually, it fuels my fire to beat them even worse, because having to pay money for him to go to school there feels like I'm paying 5 times as much. But yeah, it hurts a little bit, but he loves it down there, and trust me, we will never get him back to the state of Indiana after living down there.
So is he gone full bore? He's a Wildcat fan now?
He wears all of his IU stuff. He's still a huge IU supporter.
What's going to happen for that game for him?
Because as a college kid, it's cool to be different. So he'll be an IU fan at that point, and he can blame it all on me. He can say I'd kill him if he didn't root for IU, but I'm sure he'll have a little bit of
I'd say, yeah, well, you're right. I don't care. You're right.
I mean, if he wants to come home in the summertime, he has to root for Indiana. So, I mean,
I did the same with my daughter. She didn't grow up an IU fan. She kind of got her started that way.
She lives in Kentucky too now. Let's not.
She lives in Kentucky with her mom. Well, and she's actually at school at Ole Miss. But the one thing, but the one thing from minute go, I didn't care who she was, but no Kentucky. I had that in her mind, and to this day, that is still there. Thank goodness. She kind of leaned more towards Louisville, because her mom and stepdad were Louisville fans. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm so neutral with that.
No
I'm like,
right.
I'm a neutrality there. And she goes to Ole Miss, and she's having a ton of fun. She was rushing the field, got to rush the field the other night to get after the LSU game. And I'm like, that's cool stuff, man. And they play against Kentucky. So I'm like, rock on. It all works. But yeah, it's funny how you want your kids to
believe
to have
me.
that
I never thought this is the one I would have to talk out of going to Kentucky. Trust me.
What was it that drew him down there? But
hey, you know what? I can honestly say this: it's the only place he could get in. That's how easy it is to get in there.
I thought you were going to say the pretty girls, because they definitely have.
That's why I'll never get him back. But that's not what got him down there. But that's why I'll never get him back. I promise you.
Oh man, what have you been up to as we get closer to the basketball season? What have you been doing? What's been up with Todd Leary?
Well, you know, the usual, same old. Summertime, we've had great weather, so I've played a lot of golf and just working.
I saw you yesterday. I didn't get to yell at you, but doing a little chipping and putting late, trying to get that practice in.
That's right. You know, I've had not the best year of scoring this year, so I thought maybe I'd start backwards and go chipping and putting.
You don't get to play as much.
I don't.
Used to, and that's it. And if you are a good player, as Todd is a good player, and when I say good, I mean good. I'm not farting around saying, "Oh yeah, I'm good." No, I mean good. You got to play. Golf is a game you just have to play, man. I mean, free throw shooting, you can take off and come back
years,
and just
20 years. I can take off for 20 years and still shoot 90%.
And yeah, but golf, boy, it ain't a game. It's not a game of inches. It's a game of micrometers.
Yep.
Yeah, good to see that. So we get closer to the season. I can't wait. Are you going to be able to? I know you go to some of the home games. Will you be able to go to any of the fun away games?
Yeah, I think I'm going to Atlanta. And then I don't know about New York yet, but I know we're going to Atlanta. Really looking forward to that. It'll be a blast.
Yeah, I think I've heard from a lot of people that are heading. Dude, you want to talk about Indiana traveling? I was in Las Vegas last year when they played Kansas, and going there, I'm thinking, all right, Kansas the border is across the damn line,
right.
And 2 hours maybe max for their fan base. It was 80% Indiana fans in that building. 80%. And I was shocked. It was like at the Gator Bowl a couple of years ago with Tennessee and Indiana in reverse, where I saw all these Indiana fans early for that game, and I'm like, wow, look at this turnout.
And then you showed up, and
then I got to the press box, and I'm like, whoa, what the hell? It was all this orange everywhere. It was nuts.
We're the first ones that admit when we go to any kind of football schools home games, it's a unique experience. We're not used to seeing fans at that level at the football games at SEC schools and Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan. Like, it's a different animal. It's a different
absolutely. But Indiana basketball will travel. Forrest lives down in Georgia. We have a lot of people that are listening that down in the Georgia area, down into Kentucky, and out through there, and Florida. That's an easy drive from a lot of places right there. Easy to get to. So
you're telling me I drive through Georgia about every other week. I love it.
You're a driving fool, but plus you have another reason for Georgia, going back to Georgia.
That's right. I got my 2 national championship shirts. I am a fair weather front row. I'll join the bandwagon anytime a team's good.
All right, Georgia is not the number 1 team this year. I am not sold on them.
I'm not either.
I'll tell you,
but it's early. It's still early for them, and they're gonna be hard to beat. Like, I'll put it that way. They're not. I don't think they're the best team in the country. But I honestly, until we see Michigan play somebody that's really good, I don't know that there is one team that's way, way better than everybody else.
I love Washington.
Well,
I know Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer, but they have got a schedule they have to get through. Colorado, USC, Utah.
Does a high flying offense like that end up winning? They're the most fun team to watch in the country without any question about it. Like, they are a blast to watch. I wish they weren't on at 11 p.m. every Saturday.
Trust me, I know, because I watch the games, but I recruit. But I'm also I'm cheering for not only Michael Penix Jr. and Kalen DeBoer.
Right.
Both Kalen DeBoer is just an awesome guy. He's been on with us already before the season. I remember you saying several years ago that it would not. It was a big loss to Indiana staff when he left. Oh,
and you couldn't.
They haven't recovered.
Right.
They haven't recovered.
Right. They have not recovered. You are correct.
And that's going to end up costing Tom Allen his job, I believe. Not this year. Contractually they can't do anything really. A $20 million buyout. That's what you have, right? You have a $20 million buyout.
Ish, yeah, in that neighborhood.
Ish. But yeah, because out of the 4, now 5 offensive coordinators, but 4 previous, you had Mike DeBoer, didn't work out, had to be let go. Kalen DeBoer was here, but gone. And then I pissed you off probably as much as any. Is the day they hired, I said, if they hire Nick Sheridan, I am going to just go off. And they came out, they named Nick Sheridan, and I went off. And because I said it was the biggest, dumbest mistake in the history of, and it was. He's gone. Then they bring in Walt Bell, and who was 2-23 at UMass, and I'm like, what are you doing here? But it's sad. I hope things get turned around for them. They have a break this week. I hope to see Josh Henderson recover and get back. And I'm wondering what they're going to do at quarterback. I'm thinking there might be a quarterback change, because I went into this season saying Brendan Sorsby was the guy. And if they make this change, we'll see what happens. But they had that happen last year when they bring in Dexter Williams out of nowhere, who was just strictly a running quarterback and just ran all over Michigan State and was about to do the same to Purdue before he tore his knee up. But it's interesting. What have you been watching mostly sports-wise? The Ryder Cup, I know, that sucked for the U.S.
God, boy, they made that a pretty boring weekend right off the bat. Losing 4-0 on the first set of stuff was difficult. But yeah, not having golf on, it's a slow time of year. But I do love college football. I like the NFL. So I mean, the weekends are great, but during the week it's pretty slim.
Todd Leary, I cannot thank you enough, brother. It is great to see you, and look forward to seeing you again. And we'll definitely be seeing you at some of these games for sure. But we'll be chatting and see what else we can get going, man. But be safe today, and say hello to all the peeps down in Floyd County for us.
Yeah, I'm there. I'll do it.
Have a good, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Todd Leary, former Indiana basketball player, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. We've got lots more coming up in the next hour. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star and Rick Bozich, the Hall of Fame writer, will join us as we will continue talking about the return of the Kentucky-Indiana schedule, of course. Major League Baseball's playoffs underway. Iowa loses their quarterback for the year. Lots more returning right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
We'll return right after this. We'll return after this from the Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
That was great.
Yes, it was. It was awesome to see Todd Leary.
It was great for anytime you see somebody that's doing it on their phone like that, ask them to turn it sideways before we go on. I didn't want to do it while we were on. I should have, but I didn't.
Okay. We go.
That's all that is.
We go live here in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, recruiting Wednesday, I should say. Big news Wednesday. All kinds of things going on in the world of basketball, college basketball. Of course, as we've been talking about, the return of the Indiana-Kentucky series in the 25-26 season. Cannot wait for that to happen. Even though it's 2 years away. And see, since that 2 years, so 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it'll be 5 years before the game in Bloomington. And that's why I do not expect you to see John Calipari in Assembly Hall again. My neutral self, I'm not going to be neutral here. It would be lovely to see Indiana win one out of the 2 games at Rupp and both of the other games, the neutral site and the one at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. If they could go 3-1 in that series, well, go 2-1 against Calipari before he bails, jumps ship. Looking forward to that. The contract after that, it will look different. I think that what will end up with the next one is a home and home. I don't think they'll do home and home only because of the enormity of this series and the ability to pull in more people. It's feasibly not smart to not play in, say, Lucas Oil Stadium. I'm not sure if they'll go to the Yum Center in Louisville if they want to do that for a neutral site game. We're talking about a different setup there with a 21,000 seat capacity stadium, which is, if you're doing that, you might as well be going to Gamebridge and then Yum. But since they're going to Lucas Oil, and they're doing it for the enormity, maybe they end up playing 2 games there. Or better yet, maybe Indiana gets a Kentucky contract the next time, and there's 2 games in Rupp, or 1 game in Rupp, 2 games in Simon Scott, and 1 game at Lucas Oil. But don't hold your breath on that thing happening. But fun, great talking to Todd Leary again. Always fun talking to Todd. He's been through the battles, been through the wars, and let me tell you, he told you there was Knight would never tell them there's a game that they had to win or how much he let it be known. You know that the players knew from talking to as many of them as I do and have and do. They knew what the game against Kentucky meant. They knew what the game against Purdue meant. But the game against Kentucky was different. Bob Knight had disdain for Kentucky for the same reason he had disdain for John Wooden and how revered John Wooden was. It angered him because John Wooden was cheating and he knew it. Even though he came off as, or not came off as, was, a super nice person, very grandfatherly, but he was cheating. They were the biggest cheaters, maybe even bigger than Kentucky was back then. And I'm not throwing aspirations. Hell, Kentucky got dinged for a point shaving scandal back in the day. But we'll get to all that and more later on. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joining us. And Kyle, football is it's continuing to just be a fun and intriguing week after week. You never know what's coming, it seems, anymore.
Yeah, it's been a good season so far. So looking forward to the last couple of weeks. We got our sectional draw on Sunday, and then then kind of looking forward to the playoffs, but still a couple of good weeks, really good games these next couple of weeks for the end of the regular season.
What was your biggest? I know you had game you attended last week, but what was the biggest takeaway that was there a shocker last week?
Not really. It was sort of I don't know. It was sort of a week where a lot of things stayed the same, basically, I would say.
A lot of chalk.
A lot of chalk. I had a good week on predictions because of that, but no, it was sort of one of those. I had a good chance to see Plainfield play. I hadn't seen them yet. They're I think a legitimate state contender in 5A. They're in person. They're very athletic, tall receivers, very athletic defense. They just put it on Franklin. I actually had a running clock game Friday night, which, that's back-to-back weeks I've had running clocks, which normally I cover games that aren't, aren't that lopsided. I didn't expect either of those to be Brownsburg-Westfield the previous week, but kind of worked out that way. But yeah, this, it was sort of a, not to say we didn't, it was a good week, but there wasn't a ton of big upsets or anything. I think this week, I'm going to go see Center Grove play for the first time since week 1, which is kind of weird. I haven't seen them play since the opener in Canton, Ohio. Drove over there to watch them play that one. They lost that game to St. Edward, but now they're back playing Lawrence North. They're back to playing the in-state games, and Lawrence North 5-2 and a pretty good team. So I'm just curious to see what Center Grove looks like now at this point in the year. I've still been ranking them number 1, but kind of a chance to see them in person. I can kind of compare them to Ben Davis and Brownsburg, who are the other 2 teams that people are voting for number 1. And actually, Brownsburg is ranked number 1 by the AP. And I can't really, I have no qualms if people are doing that, because they've been, especially these last couple of weeks, they have just been really, really good offensively. 500 rushing yards last week against Zionsville. So. And then Ben Davis, of course, we know how explosive they are. They played really well the last couple of weeks as well. So it's kind of looking like those three. And I would still put Hamilton Southeastern in that group too, even though they lost to Westfield on a last-second play. They very well could be undefeated right now if not for that. And I think they have the talent, the horses, the athletes that those other three teams do also. So, they don't have a senior quarterback. They have a junior quarterback, maybe the one difference, but he's played really well also. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of separation in 6A, but still not separation among those 3 or 4 teams. So that makes, when you look ahead, and 6A won't play in the tournament until what is that? Would be the 27th. So we're still a few weeks away from the 6A playoffs, but man, it's going to be super interesting. And you could see that first week, you could see Brownsburg, Ben Davis playing each other potentially. If not that week, it would be the following week, most likely. So yeah, a lot of, 6A is fun. I mean, 5A looks a lot of fun this year. I think 4A, you're looking at probably East Central is pretty clearly a favorite, but Evansville Wrights is also very good. They pounded Evansville Memorial 34-0 Friday in that big matchup. New Haven's got Miles Graham, who's I think a potential Mr. Football guy, and they're 7-0. So 4A's, I think East Central pretty clearly the favorite, but you got some other good teams there. New Pal, of course, is never too far off the radar. And then, I think some of the other, like 3A, Chittard is a pretty good bet to win that championship, I think, although they're battling some injuries. And then 2A looks wide open too. Triton Central's back to, being, at the top of the rankings and playing really good football. But that 2A seems like it changes hands every week pretty much. So, a lot of intrigue, and we'll find out Sunday what the matchups are for the sectional draw.
Looking forward to that. Looking at the stats right now, and Brock Riddle from Greenwood. You normally don't see, a lot of times, the top stats are taken by lower class teams because they're just able to dominate a little more sometimes. But man, Brock Riddle throwing for almost 1,900 yards, 26 touchdowns, which leads the state. Only 4 interceptions. Man, he's having a pretty daggone good year.
Yeah, he really is. I wrote about them earlier this season. He actually just committed to Indiana State last night. So he is, and he wasn't even a guy who was anywhere on anyone's radar. Is one of those, and he grew. He was kind of a late bloomer as far as his size, his height. He's a tall kid who can also run. He's deceptively. I don't want to say deceptively, but he's a good athlete. He can not, I guess, deceptively, because you think of him as a passer, but he can also run. And that's been a program that's just they have had some good years in the past under Mike Campbell, who he transitioned into the athletic director going into this year, and then they had some players kind of left over from last year, and they were not very successful at all. They ran they were more of a running team. Won just one game last year. They were 1-9, and then Justin Bozich came in from Clarksville, and he had success down there, but they were mainly a running team down there. And then he brought in this offensive style where they're opening things up and passing, and I think because of the personnel they have, and he saw Brock Riddle was a really capable passer, and he's got a couple of really good receivers too. Amari Middleton's a big play guy, and Tanner Crouch, who's also can make big plays, but just catches a lot of passes. So they came out and they surprised a couple teams early. They beat Martinsville, which was a surprise, and they're not very good defensively, but they can score on anybody. They jumped out on Decatur last week. Decatur, of course, very strong every year, and they're a bigger school than Greenwood. Greenwood's, again, they're in the Mid-State Conference. They're only about half the size of a lot of these other schools. So, they're one of the smaller schools in that league. But they've been really, really good offensively, and Brock Riddle's a big part of that. So, yeah, his stats are amazing, and he played himself into a scholarship offer and committed. So cool for him.
I'm looking at the rankings. I think these are your rankings, I believe, because Center Grove is at the top, still ranked number 1 at 6-1 with Ben Davis right there, as they coming off of a big win over Carmel. That's a huge win. Carmel may not be what they normally are, but anytime you can beat a school like Carmel, the largest school in the state, that's a win. Yeah,
Carmel's kind of in a bit of, I don't know what the rebuild or their quarterback's only a sophomore, and they've been hit by some injuries. Seems like it's been for whatever reason, just a lot of injuries. Not like, I guess it's any football season, you're kind of dealing with that, but just seems like some key guys have gotten hurt. They've had a couple of those also in a year where they lost a ton of defensive guys anyway from graduation last year. So, they're sort of in a reboot, I guess. But, that is a good win. And Carmel played them pretty tough for a half. Ben Davis, though, is just so, explosive on offense. You can't even hardly keep them to, 28 points is like a good day for a defense against them. They're just so tough on offense. But yeah, I mean, they're a team that I don't think anybody really wants to see. They're veteran quarterback, really good running back. You got Mark Zachary, who's is kind of a defensive guy, but he's a great receiver. They just have all kinds of weapons. They are dealing with an injury too at linebacker, key guys out, but they have a lot of weapons, and that Brownsburg game, when it happens, I'm sure it will happen either week 1 or week 2 of the 6A playoffs, but that's going to be a heck of a game. And, really looking forward to seeing those two teams match up. But I would probably I've still been putting Ben Davis 2 just ahead of Brownsburg. But, again, it's I don't see it's like I think I've said before, it's kind of a 1A, 1B, 1C type of thing more than 1, 2, 3. Because putting a 3 next to Brownsburg's name doesn't really seem fair either. But you gotta, that's just the way it goes. But we'll see. I mean, none of those teams play each other in the regular season, so it's just hard to know kind of how they stack up. And every game's different. You could play these games, 10 times over, and they might beat each other half the time. But you're only going to get one shot at it.
I'm trying to find the AP poll, and I'm not having much luck right now. Just checking number 1 to see where my Highlanders are.
Yeah, I've got it here. It came out yesterday. It's they are tied for 8th with Decatur Central.
I just the fact that they're hanging in like that is, I have not been able to keep up with them, but I'm happy, baby. Love to see that. What's going on? And that's 5A, right? They're still in 5A, right?
Yeah, they're 5A.
That's going to be interesting.
5A is kind of with that class that, who knows? I mean, Bloomington North and South. Bloomington South plays Brebeuf this week, so I'm curious to see how that game goes. Brebeuf is really good. They're misleading. They're 3-3, but they play a lot of bigger schools. They're really good on offense, and Bloomington South is too. So I'm curious how that game goes. Bloomington North's ranked number 1 for, I think, the first time ever. And then I still think
South is what, number 3?
South is 3, yeah. And then, I think Fort Wayne Snyder is probably the team to beat in 5A if you're really being realistic about it. But their tradition, and they always have great athletes at Snyder. So I still think I would pick them to emerge in 5A. But that south side of the bracket, man, it's like I said, Plainfield's really good. Decatur, you can never count them out. And then all those other teams, and Bloomington North and South, and who knows? I mean, Evansville North is having a good year, so it's just hard to know for sure in the south side of 5A.
And that's fun to see because you've got teams from different parts of the state. Like you just mentioned, Evansville, Floyd Central down in this what I call Southern Indiana, the real Southern Indiana, down in Floyd County, down in that area. Fort Wayne, you've got to always have the schools from Fort Wayne, and then of course up in the region, there's always somebody coming out of there or straight north. And when I was growing up or in school, actually, God, it's all you heard were teams from the north. Penn and just dominated Hobart, or however they say it, the Brickies,
Plymouth,
the Brickies. just all the time. So,
Jimtown.
Yep. Oh yes, Jimtown was always up there. Derek says he was shocked at Wright Smoke Memorial. So, but we've got lots more coming up, man. I appreciate you so much, Kyle, and look forward to seeing what goes on in next week as we get closer to seeing who's going to end up with Mr. Football as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jim. We'll talk to you next week.
Make sure you're giving Kyle a follow, Kyle Neddenriep, and be a subscriber to the Indy Star. Keep local papers alive, I am. We've got to take a break. Rick Bozich should be joining us up next. Look forward to it. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
What conference was the DAC, man? I was in the HHC, a Hoosier Hills Conference. And back then, Bloomington North was in our conference. They got out smartly so because they were the furthest northern team. They had to play Floyd Central and New Albany. I think that was the only far south games they had to Jeffersonville. So those 3 games. Bedford, which not far away, obviously, but Seymour was not in the Hoosier Hills Conference at that time. They joined after Bloomington North. Rick Bozich joining us today. I will send him a text, unless that's him. I hope. Did Rick not get the? Did Rick not get the link, RC?
I tagged him in the email. I'm double checking right now, but I'm certain I did. Yeah, he's in the email.
I just emailed it to him or texted it to him.
Yeah, I was given his AOL email. That's the one he uses.
I just texted it to him.
Okay.
Please resend the link.
I just resent it.
Hi.
Oh, there he is.
All right, guys, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. And Rick Bozich joins us as always. A lot of big bonuses the Hall of Famer comes in. Rick, and there is plenty to talk about. I'm not sure if you've heard, but the Indiana-Kentucky series is returning. I'm just kidding.
How about that?
But
By the time-
yes, John Calipari will not step foot in Simon Scott Assembly Hall. I promise you.
I'm with you on that. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It'll be Nate Oates or I don't know who else will be out there by then. Somebody again famous.
Yeah, I was already thinking that. I was thinking that too. I'm like, I wonder who that's going to be. And boy, Nate Oates. Alabama is not going to want to let him go. He is, simply by what he did with Boogie Fland. When there's a recruitment that seems to be down to two programs that are Indiana and Kentucky, and you're able to all of a sudden elevate yourself into that conversation, I was like, whoa, that made me stand up and say, man, he's working it hard, because that's hard to break in.
Yeah, I mean, well, they were the number one overall seed in the tournament last year. They were getting big time players. They got more big time players. Yeah, he's a go-getter. He's a winner. He wants to compete at the highest level. But back to your original point, I agree. That's one of the first things that jumped out at me when I saw it. The last game was in Assembly Hall. And there's a 1 year gap before they even start playing, so that means that's 5 years down the road.
Yep.
I don't even know what is Calipari, 61 maybe, 62. I don't know. But I don't know.
He sold his soul to the devil, so I have no idea.
The most exciting thing about it is
it's back. That it's back.
And for Indiana, going after that 2025 class, which is filled with in-state kids, that's a great recruiting. He's 64, actually. That's the greatest. That's a great recruiting pitch to say, you guys come back here and you're on the first Indiana team that plays Kentucky, in terms of the class. Harrelson and Sisley and Mullins and I think Xavier Robinson, the kid from Lawrence North. So, that's the deal.
Yeah, and not only that, right now, or I don't know right now, but today at some point, Mike Woodson, Yasir Rosemond, Kenya Hunter, Brian Walsh will all be in New York visiting Boogie Fland again. They are following up the visits by Nate Oates and who's that guy? Anyway, some guy in Lexington. But the Indiana wants. They don't just want one. They don't want just Liam McNeely out of this three. They want this trio. They want to land what I will call a Duke class, because of the statement alone that says, and what it says for the future, without question. Because not only are you landing a multitude of elite players, but it's who you're beating to do that. Beating Kansas again for Liam McNeely. If you beat Kentucky for Boogie Fland, and I guess Maryland, maybe Houston, whomever is the biggest output for Derek Queen. But just getting all three of those, that would be. Well, I don't even have to say how huge that would be, and the message that would send by Mike Woodson.
Yeah, I mean that's swimming in the deep end. That's swimming in the shark tank. That's putting all your chips in the middle of the table and saying this is what we're going for. And I remember when Woodson came, that was one of my primary questions of he'd been in the NBA his whole life. I know he'd related to players in the NBA. I guess in free agency, there's some kind of recruitment, but this is a different recruitment. And how would he do in that? And over the last 2 years, there have been criticism of him at times. There was criticism of him last spring when he had knee replacement surgery, that he wasn't out on the circuit as much as some other coaches. But I think he's shown that he gets it, and he's shown that he'll do the work. And now he just has to close the deal.
And they are trying to do that very thing today. I mean, it's not just New York that they're going to see Boogie Fland. They are also going to be seeing McNeely and Queen today.
Queen.
So
Right.
both they're trying to close. That's exactly what he's trying to do, close the deal, because apparently I had Rob Cassidy on Monday, and he was with Liam McNeely the day prior on Sunday. He said he still feels solid that Indiana is the leader for Liam McNeely, but of course, we all know what that means, and he acknowledges that, but he just can't imagine, with all the resources, the time, the relationship, that would be broken here. And I agree. I mean, he's got Montverde players that he can talk to at Indiana, and they can tell him, hey man, no, it's what they say. It's how they say it is. He works to get us into the league, whatever those conversations are, which is also the same for Derek Queen. NIL is not a problem. Indiana is Hoosiers for Good. They're one of the top 25 NIL programs, but they're in the top 3 for those that I consider basketball driven. Kansas is in front, and surprisingly, I think West Virginia which is a little shock. I know Kentucky has to be right there, but they're not going to lose out because of NIL. That's I'm convinced on that. It's with these 3 guys especially. Mike Woodson is probably saying, hey, whatever we need to do. But getting it done, that's something that they have to do. They've landed. It's not that he hasn't landed elite talent, but he hasn't landed a group like this that just is just all 3 highly sought after at the same time. And that would be probably the biggest recruiting group. I would go back to 1989 in Indiana, when you had Todd Leary and Pat Graham and Greg Graham and Calbert Cheney, Chris Reynolds, Lawrence Funderburk. These were all top level players, and I'm missing somebody.
Lawson.
Chris Lawson was also on that team. That of course, that's a 7-man class, but that's a hell of a class that they had there. And that was before all the rankings. But this is, in today's recruiting, this would be, well, hell, it would put Indiana up toward the top as a recruiting class, I would imagine.
I would think it'd have to be top 2 or 3. And then at that point, you can maybe find one more kid who is more of a developmental type player, or you save the scholarship for the next year because the 2025 class is so strong, especially in state, that you want to keep building on that. But yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. And, I think over the next month, we'll finally get some answers. And the fact that they're going 4 deep and going to Florida and then going to New York and then to Florida. I guess Jordan Hull run practice today or whatever, or they won't practice. I don't know, but it's a big statement that they don't want anybody to have any kind of advantage on them.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is all new when you see coaches making multiple trips to pay visits. Usually it which I know I don't want to, back in your day, well, it used to be they'd make one in-home visit and that would be it. That would be the in-home visit. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's like, well, we went and then somebody else went and then somebody else went. Well, I got to go back. Well, this guy comes back and I'm like, ooh, wow. They may have to start limiting in-home visits or something, because otherwise it could become a tit for tat. And
I think there is a limit on how many times you can visit a guy, but what you have to do something like this is you have to have the private plane to get this kind of stuff done. And so that's what they have. I don't know whose plane it is, whether it's University plane or somebody who's
I got to guess.
Fan of the do you really? I think it's the one based in Clark County. But anyway, you have everybody lined up. So when it's time to go, you just get on the plane and go. And there's not much left to say. I'm sure they've said their pitch in every different way. This is what you'll do. This is what we lined up for you. This is what we've done for other people. This is what your NIL opportunities could be. It's just a matter of saying, this is how much we want you here by we're getting up early this morning and we're going to be at New York at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. or whatever it is to show you that we're serious about this.
As far as the timing of these decisions, Liam McNeely is expected to make his decision within the next 2 weeks, per Rob Cassidy, when he was with us on Monday. And he expects Boogie Fland to make his decision more closer to the end of the month, around Halloween. Derek Queen, I have no idea on his timeline, because he has, to my knowledge, he has 2 more visits scheduled, I believe.
Right.
Houston and where else? I forget where else he's going.
Is it LSU or Maryland?
I was going to say, I can't remember if it was Maryland again or not, but I know Maryland was the thought lean for Derek. And right. I don't know that that's changed or not, but I know that Mike Woodson is trying to do all he can to make that happen. And I would not be at all surprised if he is able to do that because of the work they are putting in. And I think that they will throw everything that they can to make this happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious it's a priority. It's just a matter now of, we've talked about this before. It's been a while since they've got a regular commitment. The last couple of guys they've got have been decommitments who committed, very good players. I don't think going forward that's a good strategy. You need to have guys lined up ahead of time so you're not scrambling after the season, sort of piece your roster together. You get the foundational pieces in, and then you adjust to that.
We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. The Hall of Famer Rick Bozich is with us right now from WDRB.com. Make sure you're following him for all of your sports content, regionally or not. We'll be right back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
No game this weekend, right?
What's that?
No football game this weekend?
No loss this weekend. Yes, you're correct.
I didn't even watch the game Saturday. I was driving home from Lexington.
No comment. I watched games this weekend.
Right.
It was, yeah.
You think this means they go back to Sorsby is or not?
I said Sorsby at the start of the year. And that didn't come and it's not because I'm a genius, obviously I'm not. But I talked to a couple of people, a player or two, a father, and I just kept getting they're both good. Sorsby's a better passer. Maybe Taven's a better runner, whatever. And I'm like, I'm thinking Sorsby. It's got to be Sorsby. He's the best choice. But they don't make choices on what's best. There are too many times decisions have been made, most of the time, on deserves or should be. Well, it should have. It had to be, quote unquote, Taven Jackson, because he transferred from Tennessee and made this big move, and I'm sure he's got a nice NIL package, and you cannot ignore that he's Trace Jackson Davis's brother, and all of this, that, and the other thing, and they needed it to be that way. And look how they set up the 2 games. They gave the start to Sorsby against Ohio State, and then they give the start for Taven against, was it Indiana State? And where he got most of the snaps, and they supposedly outplayed him. I'm like, okay, well, how about you reverse that and see how that works out? But Sorsby looked good coming in. Some people are going to say that was against mop up. I don't know about that. I don't know how much mop up you do. There's not, you don't really, you've got to be up big in games, I think, for teams to start really taking out their better players. But I think Sorsby, I think they've got to go. I think that at least with Rod Carey has been around long enough and has coached long enough, he won't make those types of decisions. And Tom Allen will not put that on him because I don't think I think he has enough respect for Rod Carey that he understands that he does not have a great understanding of offense, I guess is the best way to put it. He's not an offensively minded coach, and Tom, that's why we've heard him say, "Oh, we're going to be the head coach of the defense, and he's going to be the head coach of the offense." Well, that's not a good sign. It's like that's a disconnect, and I'm always I love Tom, and I don't. He's one of the greatest humans I've ever met, but I don't like the fact that he's always jumping around with excitement and enthusiasm when big plays happen and down there congratulating instead of looking at a chart, figure out, hey, where are we right now? What's up next? What do we got to do here? What do we got to do right now, right here? And I've said that many times. So it's just, I think he'll bring stability to the offense.
Right.
And I don't understand why you already had him on staff. Why the hell was he not the offensive coordinator to begin with? He's had experience as offensive coordinator.
Right.
And was apparently decent at it.
He's a former IU player too, right?
Yep. A lineman, which will help Indiana. What you did last year, you saw an improvement almost immediately.
Right.
They were able to go to Michigan State. And I'm still shocked by that win, how they got it. And then what happens when Dexter Williams comes back? I think that they are able to use him in some kind of form, but not at quarterback. He doesn't throw the ball, but you can't not use him. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't know that they're in a position where they can get to 6 wins because teams are starting to get better. Illinois, they're hot garbage in a dumpster fire going down the river.
Getting beat by Purdue like that's pretty bad.
Well, Purdue had been terrible. And I'm thinking, they're going to be awful all year. And then they put 44 points up on Illinois. And I guess losing Ryan Walters has killed Illinois. But offensively, they haven't been able to do anything. RC, are we still waiting for the break to end?
Sorry about that. Let's go live on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, October 4th. The great Rick Bozich with me, and lots to talk about. We've talked about the returning of the Indiana-Kentucky basketball series, which is huge to me. And Rick, I think this was the best basketball series in the United States, bar none. I don't care about Duke, North Carolina, but Duke, North Carolina, they got good at the same time, and then the Indiana-Kentucky thing started to fizzle at that same time. But this was the best series in the country when it was going, and when you had Bob Knight coaching against Rupp, Bob Knight coaching against Joby Hall. Even when Mike Davis was in there running on Sutton. And then even when you had Mike Davis running around the court and just becoming a madman, it was kind of funny. But that's where the disparity started to happen. And it was actually a good thing that Indiana, Kentucky didn't play during the Archie Miller era. That would have been that would have been just like going to a graveyard visit But great to see that back, as I said, and looking forward to it. But Indiana football, also news, obviously, Rick, new offensive coordinator. Walt Bell fired after just a season which Indiana has just been miserable, looked kind of lost. You could just put all kind of adjectives in there. Rod Carey taking over, who has experience as a somewhat successful OC at Northern Illinois. And I'm wondering why the hell he wasn't already in that position, because they made him the interim offensive line coach last year after he replaced Hiller and made instant improvement there. He's a former lineman for Indiana, so he has a good understanding of that. I don't know if the improvement can be made quick enough. The first game you're coming out of this bye week is you got to travel to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan. So it's big old punch in the mouth coming probably for that, but it should certainly change the fortunes for Indiana for the rest of the season, because you've got games to look at: Illinois, Minnesota, Rutgers, who is not going to be a push. There are no pushovers. I thought Purdue was going to be that, but the only somewhat pushover is right now I see is Illinois and half Michigan State, because they kind of put up a fight the other day for the first time. So that'll be an interesting one there. But those are the only two, and that's a 5-win season. Indiana's going to have to steal a win somewhere, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Their only path really to get into 6 will involve winning that home game against Rutgers. Because doesn't it go Michigan, Rutgers, then Penn State? I forgot after that.
I know that Minnesota's in there somewhere.
I don't think they play Minnesota. I know
is that not this year?
No, they play Wisconsin at home, and then they play down the stretch at Illinois, Michigan State at home, and at Purdue. So, the winnable game. I mean, Penn State and Michigan are out of reach, so that's already 5 losses. And then that means you're left with that'd be 2 and 5. You got to win 4 of the last 4 of the other 5. So you got to beat Rutgers. You're going to have to beat, then with 3 of the last 4, Wisconsin.
And Wisconsin is kind of coming around under Luke Fickell, first-year coach.
I mean, they're going to be tough, play tough. But anyway, the thing, I can't even focus on that because I don't see them winning 6 games. Their offense is so inept and impotent that I don't see them scoring enough points to win. So you got to show improvement. You've got to at least give the impression that you have a plan of what you're trying to do. And you've got to give people some reason to come to the games by not getting blown out at this point. And it's going to be a hard thing to do, because once you get to the point for any team, I think, where a bowl game's out of reach, it's hard in today's day and age to keep players engaged, because I think at that point they start thinking, am I going in the portal or not? And that's that's
going to be Indiana's biggest challenge is holding on to what they have, because
their best players. A lot of their better players are young. Lucas, Dunham, and there's another defensive back who's young, who's pretty good. I mean, that's going to be their biggest challenge going forward. So I don't know. I mean, it's never good when you change. This is 2 years in a row they've made a major change to the offensive side of the team in the middle of the season. That's not a good sign. And it's not a good sign that this is 7.5 years in for Tom Allen, and this is his 5th offensive coordinator, I believe, right? DeBoer, Sheridan, Walt Bell, and now Rod Carey. That's 5. Most head coaches don't get a chance to hire 5 offensive coordinators. Now, and one left, the other 3 were pushed out, unless guys are leaving for better jobs. Not a good sign. And so, what's really eye-opening to me is, on Saturdays in Lexington, I watched Kentucky just pound on Florida. I mean, they beat Florida decisively. They ran the ball right down their throat. And it's the culmination of we both remember Kentucky lost 31 games to Florida. Now they've won 4 out of
straight.
6. They've beaten them 3 in a row. 3 in a row. That didn't happen by changing an offensive coordinator. That happened by a commitment to football by the University of Kentucky on all aspects of the program to take it seriously and say, if you're going to be in the SEC, you got to invest in the program at all levels, stadium experience, practice facilities, recruit budget, coaching staff. And, that's the way you have to do it. Okay. Indiana hasn't done that. Until they do that, changing the offensive coordinator isn't going to make any difference.
I agree. And it's funny you say that. It's very ironic because listeners of the show will know that I made a comparison. I think it was yesterday, or whenever this, maybe it was Monday when this news, I think it was Monday, but I said, IU fans are not going to want to hear this. I said, but the program that Indiana needs to pattern themselves after is Kentucky. I said that just the other day. Well, Louisville, they've had ups and downs. Louisville definitely did it. I think that they have more flexibility or had more flexibility, but they made better decisions. They've both have made better coaching decisions, and that is what has been. That's what's been at the base of Indiana, not just football. Go back to basketball. They just made horrible decisions. And then what the hell's with these contracts? Todd Leary was on with me earlier. I'm like, you've got a $20 million buyout, right? He's like, ish. I'm sure you've got a $20 million buyout, right, Rick?
Yeah, we talked about this before. You can't give a contract that you can't afford to pay the buyout. You don't do that because you're really putting yourself. You have to look at any contract and say what's the best case scenarios and what are the worst case scenarios. The worst case scenario, there's 2 of them in giving this contract to Tom Allen. If you win and the buyout isn't big enough and he leaves, then people are going to be mad at you. And I'm sure that's what they were fearful of when they gave him this contract. But if that's the case, so be it. It means you've had great success and you go out and get another coach and you build on that success. The downside of it is if you have to pay a buyout because your coach is doing well, then it's crippling. You can't pay the buyout. So you're stuck with the coach and you have an unhappy fan base. You're not winning and it sets you behind trying to move forward. And so that's where they're at with this. And that's really a terrible situation. And, I mentioned Louisville. This weekend, Kentucky plays at number 1 Georgia on national TV at 7:00, and Louisville plays Notre Dame. Louisville's 5-0. Notre Dame's 5-1. If Louisville wins that game, they're going to be 6-0. They go to Pitt, which is 1-4 next week. They're going to be 7-0. They've got a legitimate chance to play for the ACC championship in Jeff Brom's first season with a program last year that was only filling half the stadium. This year, they're going to fill 60,000. Saturday night, they're going to fill nearly 61,000 seats. It's the biggest game the program's had probably since Lamar Jackson was here. So it can be done at places that invest in football and take it seriously. And that's what's going to have to happen. Whether it's got to come from the president, it's got to come from the board of trustees, it's got to come from the fan base. And one thing I have noticed just listening to different people, there's a lot of unhappiness in Indiana fans about the way this is going, and that's actually a good thing because that puts pressure on the administration and the football program to do better. And that's one reason I think that Walt Bell isn't there anymore, because they knew that the unhappiness over the performance of the offense was such that they had to do something. That's the way I see it. When you look at other schools that are showing you it can be done, that gives Indiana fans reason to say, what's going on here?
Well, they're right. And again, I just go back to it's just been a series of bad decisions. I say it 1,000 times. I love Tom as a person. He's one of the greatest humans I've ever met, and he's great for these kids. They're better off to be around him. But I just don't think that his first head coaching job should have been a Big Ten head coaching job at a program that was in desperate need of a lot of things. That takes somebody to me that has a lot of experience and a lot of vision. But that vision and experience has to be on both sides of the ball. You have to understand the game in its entirety. And there have just been too many times where simple decisions have cost Indiana games. Most recently, the Louisville game. The fact that call was allowed to be called, I will never understand that. the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville against Tennessee, when everybody in the world knew the onside kick was coming, except Indiana, which still befuddles me. I don't get that. And it's just, you can just see there's a disconnect, and you can't have that. And now you see teams like Kansas, who they were right there with Indiana as being the worst team in Division I football history. But boy, look at them all of a sudden. Scored points, having fun, being in games, playing against opponents. It's just, you've got to, and all of the Big Ten has got to rise up. They're going to have to rise up because Washington's coming in, Oregon's coming in, USC's coming in, UCLA's coming in, and they want some people to beat up on. Do you want to be the punching bag, or
no? At
least be competitive? And Kentucky, they're not winning the SEC, but damn it, they're sure trying to win the SEC East. They like you mentioned, Florida, they had lost to them 31 straight times, and now Stoop said, he goes, we're building a streak of our own. Well, they have. They beat them 3 straight damn times. And that game the other day, that was impressive. I watched it, and I was like, wow. It was.
There was nothing fluky about it. It was physical dominance, Jim. Physical dominance. Kentucky looked like they had better players, faster players. It was very impressive, and you have to give Stoop credit. He's come in there and built a program. That is his program. He's done something at Kentucky that nobody's done there since Bear Bryant. This
7
is
years?
either 11th or 12th season. I think it's his 11th season. Yeah.
But his recruiting has been solid for years. I know probably 5 years ago, I remember he landed some 5-star. He beat Alabama. And I'm like, I think the kid was from Kentucky, but I'm like, how the hell?
They've beaten other kids. They've had a really good strategy. What they do, they have a lot of kids out of Ohio and Michigan who are not the kids that Ohio State and Michigan want.
But that's a great football grounds, man.
They sell them on come to Kentucky and play in the SEC at a place fairly close where your family can come watch you play. And it works. And, I don't know what Indiana's niche is going to be or who it's going to do it, but they got to find one because the way it's going now isn't working. You can't get blown up by Maryland. I mean, you can't get blown up by Maryland. And that's what happened. They weren't even competitive against Maryland. You get blown up by Ohio State or Penn State, okay, that can happen to anybody. You can't be getting blown up by Maryland. Then you can't come back in 2 weeks and get blown up by Rutgers. That does more than anything to tell fans that you're not serious about this. I mean, it does.
Maryland has become the new best of the rest in the East. You've always got Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan State used to be that best of the rest, and they have been relegated down. Indiana took it over for a year and relinquished it. But Maryland's been building toward it with Loxley. They've been building toward the recruiting, and you kind of saw it coming, and they're not going to slow down. So you've got, everybody's like, well, they'll be out of the Big Ten East next year. Doesn't matter. If you don't have a good football team, you're going to be playing somebody. You're still going to be playing USC, or you're not going to have a schedule of all low-level Big Ten teams. But
we'll see how valid that is this year because 3 of the last 4 games are against Big Ten West teams, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Purdue. We'll see how well they do against that. I mean, Well, and Maryland's got a big game this week. I think Maryland's at Ohio State. This is a shitty game. Is Maryland actually a legitimate contender in the Big Ten West, or are they still several notches below the Buckeyes? We'll find out. But, I don't know. For Indiana, I mean, they're not going to beat Michigan. They need to put everything they've got into beating that. They win that game against Rutgers. If they don't, then the season's over. I mean, they're not going to. There's no talk of going to a bowl game at that point. None.
What's up next for you, my friend?
Well, I mean, Saturday night I'll be at Cardinal Stadium. Notre Dame comes in for only the second time ever. It's really a good time for Louisville to play them because Notre Dame's coming off back-to-back games against Ohio State and Duke, and has USC next week. And the Cards have an extra day of preparation because they played at NC State Friday night, and really looking forward to going that game. It's going to be a dynamic atmosphere. It's a national televised game on, I think, ABC. It's Tessitore and Jordan Rogers and Kenny George. And
Joe Tessitore. He likes to make him exciting, man. He's always on a top, no matter what's going on. We've got a timeout here and look at the action on the sideline. I mean, he's always jacked up. I love listening to him do the game.
Big game for Louisville. Big game for them to tell recruits, hey, tune in. We're playing Notre Dame on TV. We're going to beat them.
And I'm not sold on Notre Dame yet.
Right.
I am not. They have not.
They were fortunate. They could have beaten Ohio State, but they could have lost to Duke. So I think they're Notre Dame favored by 6.5. I think it'll be a fun game.
Looking forward to it. Rick Bozich, WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow for all of his content. It is complete coverage of everything. Rick, thank you, sir. Look forward to it, man.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Talk to you next week.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, big thanks to Todd Leary for joining us today on the program, former IU player, as well as Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and, of course, Rick Bozich, who just left us. Most importantly, thanks to you, all of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. We appreciate you so much. Thanks to RC for filling in one more time for John, the producer, who should return tomorrow, and we'll look forward to that. And I'm sure we'll have more to talk about as the recruiting wars continue. Stay tuned, and you can tune in and check in on thehoosier.com for all updates there, and on my Twitter as well throughout the day at Jim Coyle ISB. That's going to wrap it up for us here. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.